Hello. Today, we're exploring a phenomenon that impacts not only psychology, but also everyday life in the recovery community, the bystander effect. You've probably heard the phrase, but have you ever thought about how it shows up in situations involving addiction and recovery? Let's unpack it together. Defining the bystander effect, theory meets reality. The bystander effect is a social psychology concept that describes how people are less likely to help in an emergency when others are present. It's the someone else will do it mindset. Classic research by Latine and Darley in 1968 showed that the more people who witness a crisis, the less likely any one person is to intervene. Now think about how that plays out in addiction. Someone might see a friend drinking too much or notice signs of relapse in a coworker, but stay silent because they assume someone else will handle it. That silence can have serious consequences. Think about a time you witnessed someone struggling. Did you step in or did you stay silent? Why? What fears or assumptions might have influenced your choice? Addiction context, when silence hurts. In the recovery world, silence can be deadly. Imagine someone at a recovery meeting who looks visibly distressed, maybe even hints at suicidal thoughts. People might notice, but decide to wait for someone else to step or speak up. If everyone waits for someone else to speak up, nothing gets said. The opportunity to save a life can slip away. The bystander effect isn't about bad people ignoring suffering. It's about human psychology. We assume others are better equipped, we fear making the wrong move, or we don't want to overstep. But in recovery, waiting can mean losing someone to overdose, relapse, or despair. What fears might hold you back from speaking up in a recovery setting? Case example, overdose situations. Let's take a real-world scenario. Picture a group of friends at a party. One of them overdoses. Instead of immediately calling 911, everyone hesitates, worried about getting in trouble, waiting for someone else to take the lead. That pause, that moment of bystander hesitation, can cost a life. But when someone breaks through that silence, makes the call, administers naloxone, takes action, they literally become the bridge between life and death. Addiction magnifies the stakes of the bystander effect. Which of the following is a factor in the bystander effect? A. Diffusion of responsibility. B. Social influence. C. Fear of judgment. D. All of the above. The answer is D. All of the above. The psychology of why we freeze. Why do we freeze up when it's so clear that action is needed? Research shows three main psychological factors. Diffusion of responsibility. When many are present, we assume someone else will step up. We often wait for someone else to make the first move, someone else to act. More people frequently result in less action. Social influence. We look at others for cues. If no one moves, we think we shouldn't either. Despite the apparent need for assistance, if no one acts, we take that as a cue that we shouldn't either. Fear of judgment. What if we intervene and get it wrong? The fear of rejection paralyzes and overcomes our desire to act. This fear is often misguided, and it is always better to act overcautiously and be wrong than not to act and regret it later. Now apply those to addiction. Perhaps you're at a recovery meeting and notice a peer slipping, but nobody says anything. You assume someone closer to them will handle it. You glance around and see no one else speaking up, so you hold back too. And maybe you're scared of embarrassing them or yourself. That's the bystander effect in action. Have you ever stayed silent because you assumed someone else would help? What could you do differently next time? Breaking the cycle. Recovery communities as active bystanders. The good news? Communities in recovery are uniquely positioned to break this cycle. Why? Because they're built on accountability, honesty, and speaking up even when it's uncomfortable. Think about sponsorship in 12-step programs. A sponsor doesn't just stand by. They check in, they call out, they intervene. That's the opposite of the bystander effect. Recovery culture at its best challenges silence and replaces it with action. Who in your recovery circle could use a check-in today? Real-world example. I once heard a story about a young woman in recovery who started skipping meetings. Her friends noticed, but at first, no one said anything. They didn't want to intrude. They figured her sponsor would speak up, or maybe her family members would get involved. Weeks later, she relapsed, and everyone said, "I saw the signs, but I thought someone else would talk to her." Seeing the problem, but waiting for someone else to act. That's the bystander effect. Now, flip that story. Another time, someone noticed a peer acting withdrawn at meetings. Instead of staying quiet, they pulled them aside and said, "Hey, I've been where you are. You don't have to do this alone." Unknown to them, but that small act of courage kept the person from relapsing. They were hurting and needed someone to hear them, and that one moment of breaking the silence changed the outcome. Practical steps to overcome the bystander effect in addiction recovery. So how do we ensure we don't fall into the bystander trap? Here are some practical takeaways. Notice the warning signs: isolation, withdrawal, sudden changes in mood or attendance. Take initiative. If you see something, say something, even if it feels awkward. Better to act than not need to, than regret not acting later. Use I statements. "I've noticed you've been quiet lately. I care about you." Recognizing someone's need and taking action is the first step. Lean on the community. If you're unsure how to help, bring in a sponsor, counselor, or trusted peer. You don't have to have all the answers. Just being there and knowing where to go for help can make a difference. Remember the stakes. Silence can enable relapse or overdose. Speaking up can save a life. Communication, empathy, and support are often the change that matters. You notice a peer skipping meetings and showing relapse signs. No one else is talking to them. What's the best first step? Answer: check in privately, offer support, involve a sponsor if needed. The spiritual and human element. For many in recovery, spirituality plays a role. The Bible talks about bearing one another's burdens, Galatians 6:2. That's the opposite of the bystander effect. It's about stepping in even when it's easier to look away. Whether your foundation is faith, psychology, or just basic humanity, the call is the same. Don't be passive in the face of suffering. We all must do our part to help our fellow man and support them when they are most vulnerable with empathy and understanding. Recovery is a process and a journey that has many pitfalls and warning signs. We must do our part to help those on this path through recovery and healing. How can you carry someone else's burden in your recovery community this week? Reflection. The bystander effect reminds us how easy it is to freeze or stay silent. But in the recovery world, silence can be deadly. Each of us has the power to shift from being a bystander to being an active helper. Whether it's making that call, asking the tricky question, or offering a word of support, our action can make the difference between relapse and recovery, between despair and hope, even between life and death. So the challenge is simple: Don't wait for someone else. Be the one who steps up. True? False? Does the bystander effect only happen in large crowds? Answer: false. It can happen even in small groups or social settings. Thanks for watching. If this message resonated, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Together, we can break the silence and build stronger recovery communities. Until next time, stay strong, stay connected, and stay in recovery. As always, survive, strive, thrive.